Hi, I'm Wendy Turner, Executive Director of Michigan Public. You might have heard that public media is under threat. You're not wrong. But I come to tell you that your voice has power. Visit protectmypublicmedia.org, contact your lawmakers, and take a stand today.
From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Another candidate this week announces for governor in Michigan's ever-growing 2026 gubernatorial race. Cue the audio.
Actually, Congressman John James didn't put out any audio, no video, or really anything other than a simple, basic social media post that he is running.
What to make of Congressman John James' lackluster announcement for higher office? But first, lawmakers are coming back from their spring recess this week and next after the first 3 months of divided power in Lansing.
So what was done in the first 90 days?
Well, not all that much, according to Jordan Hermany, Capitol reporter at Bridge, Michigan, at least in terms of actual bill adoption. Rick, as Jordan notes, the legislature has finalized the second fewest laws in 2 decades. And I started by just asking Jordan to tell me what she found.
If you're looking at the last 20 years of bills signed into law during the first 90 days, we are on track for the second slowest start in 20 years. Funnily enough, actually, the first slowest start was also under Governor Whitmer in 2019. But at the moment, we're really only looking at 2 bills signed into law amid a divided government. And those 2 bills would be the changes to the state's minimum wage and sick leave laws, if you'll remember from earlier this year. But other than that, some critics say that this first 90 days of this divided legislature specifically has been filled with a lot of partisan politics and personal priorities, but not so much done between the 2 chambers.
And it's not just that it's 2 bills that you note. You wrote that lawmakers, quote, met fewer times than the last time Michigan had divided government in 2007.
Yeah, that's right. So I went back through the House and Senate journals from this current legislature and then back in 2007 when we had a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, so the flip of what we have currently. If we're looking to today, again, going back, we've only had the 2 bills signed into law at this moment. Our legislature, both in the House and Senate, is meeting about 70% of the time that they say that they will, and have collectively introduced less legislation than the 2007 Democratic House did on its own.
Jordan, the question is, what's going on here? Why is this?
So it really does depend on who you ask. I had the chance to speak and catch up with House Speaker Matt Hall last week, and he basically told me that while he understands that it might look on paper like less is going on during this legislature, he's focused on the less tangible aspects. So digging into oversight, looking into how to make the legislative chambers more transparent, things that might not seem like it's going to result in immediate legislation, and more so dealing with the machinations of government. Others, though, say that legislative leaders have spent a lot of time just making political points. They're adopting non-binding resolutions on divisive topics like barring transgender athletes from high school sports or supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, throwing up votes for bills that aren't going to pass, such as on allowing driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. So it is a little bit of jabbing here and there, and folks are saying, yeah, that seems to be what we're doing with our time instead of passing legislation.
So, Jordan, with all of this then in mind, as lawmakers come back this week and next, what should we expect from the chambers post-spring recess?
Well, and that's the big question, right? It's still not been quite clear out of the Senate what they're viewing as major priority issues. They've talked a lot about wanting FOIA, Freedom of Information Act reform, and transparency reform, but the House has a completely different idea on how to go about transparency efforts. Potentially the big unifying conversation may be roads. When we come back, obviously, if you've driven anywhere in the state recently, there are some potholes big enough to build houses in. So that's definitely a policy priority for them. I know the House is throwing around education-related policies. So it's really anyone's guess because, as noted, with the divided legislature, it has to pass both chambers. So both groups have to be satisfied with it before it has any chance of making it to Governor Whitmer's desk.
That is Jordan Hermany, Capitol reporter at Bridge, Michigan. Her piece is Two Laws in 90 Days, Michigan's New Divided Legislature Off to a Slow Start. Jordan, as always, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
So let's turn now to Andrea Bitely, founder of Bitely Communications and longtime Lansing consultant and advisor.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Thanks for making me sound old, Zoe.
Short time Lansing consultant and advisor.
I'm not even 40.
So, Andrea, we originally wanted to talk to you today about what's happening or not in the legislature, but we also had the announcement from Congressman John James this week that he is running for governor. So now we basically had to put a to-do list together with you.
There's so much going on here in the beautiful Great Lakes state.
Much. So let's start, though, with Jordan's piece about Lansing passing the second fewest bills in nearly 2 decades. Andrea, you know the legislature so well. What do you make of this?
We are in a divided government situation. That's what I make of this. And the only legislation that's really going to make it through is the stuff that everybody can agree on.
How much stuff is there that everybody can agree on?
2 bills, Rick, 2 bills. Folks are not necessarily in the most agreeable mindset at this moment. We've got issues on the national level that are making it more difficult for Democrats and Republicans to get along. We are in what has become the longest election cycle of our lives, and there is really no reason for folks to get along. However, just to play a little devil's advocate with myself, just because we've only passed 2 bills doesn't mean this legislature is ineffective. The bills that were passed mattered. It changed the way that things were going in our state in a really dynamic way. The bills were introduced in early January, and they are already in effect right now as we speak.
I mean, we should point out there are also plenty of folks who are incredibly unhappy with this compromise, including a number of Senate Democrats who actually were in the minority when it came to the vote over those 2 bills. But I am curious, Andrea, because one of the takeaways that came from this compromise was the idea that maybe we would see Republicans and Democrats, or at least some machination, whether that is Speaker of the House Matt Hall and Governor Gretchen Whitmer, working together on something big again, like, say, roads. Do you think then that it's less about the number of bills and, to your point, more about how big and impactful they are and whether it portends for more deal making into the future?
Yeah, we're really in a quality over quantity conversation right now. The governor and the speaker are having a lot of conversations, from what those of us in the chattering class are hearing, about the roads. They're deeply engaged in this conversation. And I think a lot of Michigan residents will be happy if we can fix the damn roads. And I think the governor will be extremely happy if her campaign slogan from her first run for governor will finally be fulfilled.
Let's circle back to that Whitmer-Matt Hall working relationship. I mean, what does that tell you about the leadership in Lansing right now, especially if Gretchen Whitmer does basically agree to the Matt Hall roads plan?
Well, it tells me a few things. One of them is that Gretchen Whitmer has long held beliefs that the roads are the key to her future in politics. She ran on Fix the Damn Roads. She's highlighted it so much that it's a constant running joke. I mean, we've all said, oh, fix the damn roads in jest. But the reality is it is going to be the phrase that sticks with her. Now, none of us know exactly what the governor's next step is in life. Maybe she will run for president, or maybe she will quietly retire to Northern Michigan, or somewhere in between. But that Fix the Damn Roads is going to follow her around for the rest of her career. It would make it a lot easier for her to run for president if she has actually fixed the damn roads here in Michigan. And Matt Hall knows this. Matt Hall knows that if he is able to help the governor achieve this ultimate goal of hers, that she will forever be indebted to him. And that is a pretty big trump card for Hall to have. He is really a kingmaker in her career at this moment. So they are working I mean, for a Democrat and a Republican working oddly close together on this roads package, and rumor has it on a number of other things as well.
It really is just fascinating. But we should note, as we talked to Jordan about at the top of the program, that is not keeping Matt Hall from putting up tough votes in the state house that Democrats have to take.
Absolutely. And Hall is not a non-political creature. He is very much going to force people to take votes that are hard because he has to keep the House. In order for him to continue being Speaker, he's got to make sure that he can put Democrats on the record saying no to things that their constituents want them to say yes to. And he's going to put up tough votes to make them make tough decisions.
We are speaking with Andrea Bitely, checking in on all things Lansing this week. So, Andrea, let's turn to this announcement from Congressman John James that he would like to be Governor John James. This will be the third time that the Republican has run for statewide office. He's run for Senate twice before, finally winning his current congressional seat in 2022. And aside from that fact that he's running, which was not surprising, the way that he announced this week was.
The way that John James announced this week was surprising. His entry into this race places him immediately as the Republican frontrunner. He has the best name ID, arguably the deepest pockets. His time in Washington has potentially garnered him a lot of new friends that could contribute to a state campaign, but it lacked some of the glitz and glamour that we've seen from other candidates. Just in the governor's race alone, most of the campaigns we're seeing have dropped a video. They've had a whole deluge of one-on-one media interviews across the state. They're doing a bus tour. They're making themselves available to the public. What we're seeing from the James campaign is a much more muted announcement. We saw a graphic pop up on the platform formerly known as Twitter Monday afternoon. It doesn't feel the way that I've been feeling around the other announcements I've seen. Now, one component of this that I thought about to myself earlier today was, is it because it really doesn't matter yet? And simply being in the race is enough to matter.
Yes, but like you said, there was no pizzazz, no follow-up tour.
I think what it comes down to is we are so far out from the primary and from the general election that those of us that live in the political bubble are going to notice that there wasn't a huge cacophony of sound coming out of John James land. But the average voter is probably still a little sick of last November. And maybe James's way of announcing won't matter when it comes right down to it. Maybe the big splashy announcement that I've worked on in past parts of my career and that we've seen from other candidates, maybe that doesn't matter as much. Maybe it matters more that he's simply in the race and can start fundraising.
Well, for those who maybe aren't paying as much attention, who is John James within the Republican Party? That is, how does he fit within the current GOP?
Yeah, John James is, I would call him a moderate Trump ally. He is from Macomb County. He comes from the auto industry. He has a family automotive manufacturing company that his father started. He is a Black Republican, which makes him unique as far as Republicans go. He has a young family, and he won narrowly and then less narrowly in his recent election. And he didn't perform as well as Trump, which I found interesting, but also makes you wonder if folks in Macomb County simply went into the ballot booth, checked Trump, and that's all they did on their ballot. So he has won a few times and lost a few times. He's, really wants to hold statewide office here in Michigan. The path hasn't been clear in the past. The path is maybe challenging this go around. Like I mentioned earlier, he is the front runner coming into this. Best name ID, best fundraising base. But does he have it? Does he have what it takes to win? Well, I'll have to wait and see.
As you noted, James is associating himself once again closely with President Trump at the same time as a lot of workers, businesses, people with 401ks are feeling the early effects of the president's approach to tariffs. Is this highlighting how closely James wants to align himself to Trump? Is this high risk, high reward, focus first on winning the Republican primary? Give us your read.
The way that the tariffs have been rolling across this country and right here in Michigan especially has been really interesting. You've seen the country club Republican set kind of cringing. You've seen Democrats and progressives cringing, but you've seen UAW members standing up and cheering and hoping this continues. People are really unsure and unsteady on their feet right now around what these tariffs are going to do in the long term, if they're going to stick around, if the president is going to undo the tariffs. The uncertainty in the air is pretty palpable. And it'll be interesting to see what John James does around tariffs, what his commentary is when it comes up, because it will come up. John James is going to have to ride a really fine line as people get their statements for their 401ks and as companies look at the tariffs on aluminum and steel. And what does that do to the auto industry and the aerospace industry, which is something that Macomb County has been working hard to bring in and to grow. So obviously, running for governor is a statewide task. And John James has now tasked himself with knowing what the heck's going on in Macomb County as far as what the tariffs are doing there, but also how people in northern Michigan are feeling about it, how people in southwest Michigan are feeling about it. So he now has two different groups of constituents that he needs to report to. He's got this statewide audience and he's got this local audience in Macomb County. So I'll be very interested to see how he approaches this statewide campaign this go around.
Andrea, finally, before we let you go, speaking of that local area of his, Macomb, he is currently in a swing congressional seat, Michigan's 10th. He will give up running for this seat in order to run for governor. Republicans control the House in D.C. with an incredibly slim majority. You've worked in D.C. A lot of Republican leaders in D.C. hoping that James might have restrained his bigger ambitions for the time being so that this is not going to be an open swing district.
I think there are a lot of people around the country that were hoping John James would hold on to this congressional seat and run for it again and hold it for the Republican Party. But he's not. And he's been whispering about what he's going to do next for a while now. But I think DC is now going to be very concerned about what that Macomb County seat looks like. It could be a bad year for a Republican running for Congress. Right now, the Democrats have really in the gutter polling numbers generally as a brand. But Political Science 101, we learned that, your congressman or the person that you like isn't like all the other Democrats or all the other Republicans. So if a popular Democrat in Macomb County chooses to run, they could very well take that congressional seat from a Republican.
That is Andrea Bitely, founder of Bitely Communications, giving us a read of Lansing and Washington, D.C. Andrea, thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks for having me.
And speaking of D.C., the end of this month marks 100 days of the second Trump presidency. And you can join us for a conversation with NPR's Asma Khalid and Domenico Montanaro. Asma is White House correspondent. Domenico is senior politics editor. Together, we will be talking about what it's been like covering the past few months in D.C., and we hope you can join in and ask your questions, too. More details about the virtual event are at the website michiganpublic.org/events. And that is It's Just Politics for today. I am Zoe Clark.
And I am Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.